So, as many of you heard, Matt Gaetz is dropped out of the nomination to be the Attorney General of the United States, which is pretty upsetting. I was pretty upset when I heard that, like most people out there are on our side. But hopefully, he picks someone else who is good that we all like, and someone who is up in the running now, who's a, maybe a likely contender, is Ken Paxton, who's the Attorney General of Texas. So he was reelected to his third term during the 2022 midterms. And Ken Paxton is somebody who filed like 48 lawsuits against the Biden administration. And like most notably of those, he sued them for overturning Trump's Remain in Mexico policy, which, caused a lot of, um, you know, immigration issues. He also sued them for their inadequate enforcement of Title 42, which was the like COVID jab requirements for immigration, and the Biden administration was basically not requiring that people who were crossing the border be COVID vaccinated, while the rest of us were being required to be COVID vaccinated in a lot of cases. And he also challenged Biden on a 100-day pause on deportations right when he took office. And then, so those are the big ones that he did on immigration. Then he also sued them over election integrity this November, when the election just happened, over federal officials just showing up in Texas. You guys might have seen this in the news. They just showed up in Texas to monitor the polls, which is illegal because the states run the elections. And then also during the 22 before the 2020 election, he filed 12 lawsuits, had 12 cases against mail-in ballots, and won them all in Texas. He also sued the Department of Labor for overstepping their overtime. They had some overtime regulations that were a federal thing, and they tried to come and do them in Texas. And he was like, "Nah, you ain't doing that up in here, dog." And that was in June 2024, so that just happened. He also sued over the reallocation of border wall funding that the Biden administration did. He sued over that and basically got the border wall construction to resume. He also sued over that immigration act. That was a big deal recently. That came up in the election. Actually, came up in the vice presidential debate. You'll remember that was what they tried to fact check JD Vance on, and they were like, "Yeah, well, the app these people are here legally." And JD Vance was like, "Well, let me give you a little lesson on that." And they were legal because they changed the regulations around this app and said, "Oh, if you apply on this app, essentially, as far as I understand, then you can just come in and you get a new date and all this stuff." And then he also sued over like a $1.6 trillion spending bill that the Biden administration did, that Biden signed. And then he also challenged a bunch of the COVID emergency stuff. And then he also has ongoing cases against Google and other big tech companies for monopolies and basically running all of online advertising and regulate. Basically they control all of that, and he's suing them over that. And so in the Texas House, there's an investigations committee, and they were secretly investigating him for 3 months. And this committee is like comprised of five people. Three of them were Republicans, two of them were Democrats, and one of the Republicans had no idea that they were investigating him. This was like in, I want to say, the beginning of 2023, and so they impeached him. So they surprised impeached him. He had no idea this was
Unfitness
going
for office and
on
abuse of public
bribery,
trust.
He's being
corruption, and
attacked
abuse of
by
office
his own
because like
employees.
he got some work done in his house for free from some like developer or construction guy, which was, probably, most people are probably doing way worse than that. That's, not bad, but they wanted to get him because he was filing all these lawsuits against the Biden administration. They didn't like that. And so you're probably thinking, okay, well, this is Texas. This is a Republican place. Ken Paxton is a Republican attorney general. But the way it works in Texas or in the House is that they have 150 members in the House, but 65 of them, which is 44%, are Democrats. And all the Democrats always vote together. And so to get elected to be the Speaker of the House, which is usually a Republican, that guy, what he does is he goes and he appeals to the Democrats, that 65 Democrat voting bloc, and he basically cuts deals with them and gets them to vote for him. So now he's got 65 votes. Then he only needs 10 Republican votes plus his own vote to get the majority. So the Speaker of the House is usually like in bed with the Democrats in Texas. And so they basically, so the Speaker of the House, whose name is Dade Phelan, who we're going to get into in a little bit. So he becomes the Speaker of the House, and Ken Paxton does all these lawsuits against the Biden administration. So they impeach him on this stuff to basically stop him from being able um, to file more lawsuits against the Biden administration. And they even like took away they stopped paying him, which even though by law they're required to keep paying him, but the comptroller in Texas was like, well, just sue me, and then he would have to sue him in Austin, which is obviously a big Democrat stronghold. So he basically didn't get paid, and he had just um, paid for his reelection campaign, so he was basically essentially out of money. And they were like, oh, now we can get him to stop him from doing all this stuff. Then they put a gag order on him once they filed the articles of impeachment, so he couldn't say anything to the media. He couldn't give his side of the story. Well, the gag order was on both parties, but the people who were impeaching him were just leaking information to media sources, um, and they were writing articles. And apparently, there's this guy named Karl Rove. He's like a Republican strategist, but he's kind of like a swampy guy, and he was writing. He wrote an article, and he was publishing articles, getting articles published in the Wall Street Journal that were basically attacking Ken Paxton during this whole time, while the impeachment was going on, to basically paint him in a negative light. And then there's this organization in Texas called the Texans for Lawsuit Reform, who were trying to get one of their guys elected for the Supreme Court from the Supreme Court in Texas. They were trying to get him elected to be the Attorney General. So they were funding stuff, and then also two of the four attorneys that the Texas House Committee of Investigations who filed the impeachment, two of the four attorneys that they hired were directly from the Biden DOJ. So I mean, come on. And so the guy that got elected to the Speaker of the House, whose name is Dade Phelan, we talked about him earlier, he was accused of being drunk on the floor of the House. And keep in mind, he's the Speaker of the House, the main guy up in there. They accuse him of being drunk. Now I'm going to show you a video, and you can make up your mind. I don't know if what you might think, because when I heard, oh, maybe he was, he was really drunk on the House, on the floor of the House. Here, you watch this, and you let me know what you think.
The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there objection to the opposite amendment? The chair has none. The amendment is adopted. The chair recognizes Mr. Johnson of Harris. Mr. Johnson of Harris to speak in opposition to the bill.
You want the chair recognizes Ms. Niave Criado to speak.
The chair recognizes Ms. Niave Criado to speak in opposition to the bill.
Come on. So then also there's John Cornyn, who is the other U.S. senator in Texas. So they got what's his name? Why can't I think of his name? Ted Cruz. So Ted Cruz is one senator in Texas, and then John Cornyn is the other one, and he's just like pretty much just like a establishment guy. He's just gonna like you know toe the line. So he basically has spoken out more in favor of the funding Ukraine than he has against the border invasion in Texas, in his own state. And then John Cornyn also screwed up the education system. He took in an attempt to improve poorly performing schools in Texas. He took the funding from poorly performing schools in Texas, he took funding from the good schools in Texas and spread it around all the schools, so they all became mediocre, instead of just developing a program that would target specifically underperforming schools with some sort of unique thing or like some amount of funding. He just basically made all the schools in Texas not great. So hopefully he gets primary, but we're going to see. And then also, Texas now has a ton of election integrity issues because Ken Paxton was like prosecuting tons of election fraud cases, especially like around mail-in ballots, because obviously those are very unsafe and not secure. And there was a statute in that was passed in 1951 in Texas that gave the power to prosecute election fraud to the attorney general. But the Texas Court of Criminal, basically like the Supreme Court in Texas, but the one that handles criminal cases. So the Supreme Court in Texas handles civil cases, and the Texas Criminal Court of Appeals or whatever handles criminal cases. And they overturned the statute, and they said, "Oh no, this is unconstitutional because you, Ken Paxton, are in the executive branch, and you're not supposed to dabble in the judiciary branch." But this is the law was created by the legislature, and that is one of the duties of the attorney general is to do whatever the law tells him to do. And so he tried to get that passed again, try to get it reauthorized by the House of Representatives, and the House of Representatives, the Speaker of the House, Dade Phelan, Mr. Drunko man that we just saw earlier, he said, "Hey, we don't have time to pass this right now." So now in Texas, there's no voter fraud cases ever being prosecuted because of that issue. So now it's like, oh, look, everything's fine and dandy, but it's really not because of this thing that they did with this statute. Um, so ultimately, Ken Paxton did end up getting acquitted in September 2023, which is cool. So hopefully he gets appointed or nominated to be the attorney general because based on everything that I just covered, I mean, this guy is basically straight America first, no nonsense, not scared of the media, not scared of the left, not scared of the establishment. He's basically seems to be one of the guys that's pursuing America first agenda more than probably anybody else in the country, especially as far as law and attorneys general go. So that's it. That's all I got for y'all. Please like, subscribe, comment. You let me know down below if you think that Dade Phelan was drunk on the floor of the house in Texas.